The moment I walked into the restaurant, I knew something was off. It was too quiet, too polite, the kind of silence people use when they're waiting for someone to trip and already rehearsing their laughter. Grandma's 80th was supposed to be a simple family dinner. A long table, string lights, her favorite lemon cake. But as I walked toward the empty seat at the end, the only one left, I felt it. Eyes on me, like knives waiting for permission to be drawn. I hadn't seen most of them in nearly 2 years. Not since I cut contact. No dramatic blowout. No screaming match. Just a clean break after years of emotional manipulation, backhanded jabs, and being the family's punching bag disguised as a sensitive one. But I came tonight for Grandma, because she had never been cruel, never called me a failure, never rolled her eyes when I said I wanted more than the life they all settled into like quicksand. She greeted me first, hugged me too long, whispered, "I'm glad you came." I smiled. I wouldn't miss it. Then I saw my sister, Chloe. Same smug expression, same sleek hair and surgically perfect smirk. She didn't wave. She didn't even blink. Just leaned back in her chair like she'd already won something I hadn't even entered. Dinner moved slowly. Stiff conversation. Glasses clinking over bad stories. Then, just as dessert was being served, Chloe cleared her throat. "Before we dive into Grandma's cake," she said, "I have a little something to share." She pulled out a manila folder and tapped it on the table. "Since our dear Sabrina has been telling everyone about her amazing new life, her business, her big new success, I thought we'd take a moment to fact-check." Laughter. A few gasps. Dad chuckled into his napkin. My uncle leaned forward, hungry for drama. Chloe grinned like a woman who'd waited months for this moment. I hired a private investigator. Actually, two, just to see if all her stories added up. She looked directly at me. I mean, what kind of sister would I be if I didn't protect the family from fantasy? I didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just stared at her while she handed the folder to Grandma. Grandma's hands trembled as she opened it. First page a header. Second page, a line of bold print. She read it. Her lips parted. She flipped the page again, and then her face changed. Not with confusion, not with embarrassment, with shock. She passed the folder silently to my father. His mouth tightened. He looked at Chloe, then at me, and for the first time in my life, he looked afraid. Chloe's smile began to crack, because the truth was written in black and white, but not my truth, hers. My name is Sabrina Lane, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me, because some lies come dressed as questions, but when the answers land on the table, they don't just ruin dinner, they burn the whole house down. Some people think betrayal comes loud, like slamming doors or screaming matches. But in my family, betrayal came with birthday card signed, "Love you anyway." It came with compliments that doubled as warnings. "Wow, you really pulled that off. I didn't think you would." "You're doing better than I expected, that's great. Just don't get cocky. You've always been emotional. It's hard for people like you to succeed." My sister, Chloe, was the architect of most of it. Polished, controlled, polite, even when she was cutting you in half. She always knew how to smile while she swung. I was the opposite. Sensitive, earnest, always trying to prove I belonged at the table, not because they told me I did, but because they made me believe I had to earn it. I remember once in high school I got into a writing program out of state. I was thrilled. Chloe glanced at the acceptance letter and said, "You really want to go that far just to write about your feelings?" My mom laughed. "She's creative, honey. Let her dream while she can." That was the pattern. Every ambition met with a smirk. Every boundary seen as betrayal. Every success something they either minimized or tried to claim for themselves. When I finally left, not physically but emotionally, it wasn't explosive. It was quiet. One day I just stopped replying. To the group chats. To the guilt-laced calls. To the messages that weren't really questions but traps. I started a new life in a new city. I worked 3 jobs to stay afloat. I launched a handmade goods brand out of a 1-bedroom apartment with no heat and a cracked window. I didn't tell them about any of it, and that's what burned Chloe the most. Not that I failed, but that I might have succeeded without her watching. She didn't reach out when I disappeared from the family thread. She didn't check in when I missed Thanksgiving or Christmas. But when I posted a soft announcement months later, a photo of my small studio, a little gold plaque that read founder and maker, she messaged me within minutes. "Cute. Hope it's real." I didn't answer. And from that moment on, I knew. She wasn't curious. She wasn't worried. She was threatened. Because in our family, the only way to win was to be the one with the story that stuck. And now she had hired people, literal strangers, to rip mine apart. She wasn't just trying to catch me in a lie. She was trying to drag me back into the silence I had finally escaped. But she didn't understand one thing. When you cut someone quietly, don't be surprised when they heal louder than you expected. The first night I slept in my car, I stared at the ceiling and tried to convince myself it was just temporary. A bump in the road. A detour. Not a destination. It was January. My breath fogged up the windows. I wrapped my coat around me twice and shoved a sweatshirt under my head like a pillow. No one knew. Not my parents. Not Chloe. Not the friends who liked every filtered photo I still posted to keep up appearances. If I had told them, I knew what I'd hear. "Why'd you move without a job?" You always make things harder than they need to be. Well, this is what happens when you chase pipe dreams. So I told no one. I found a job at a diner, then another at a bookstore, then a third cleaning offices at night. I slept between shifts, ate soup from dollar cans, pitched my business idea to myself while mopping floors at 2 a.m. I designed my first product on a borrowed laptop at a public library. My second on the bathroom floor of the studio, I finally scraped together enough to rent. No furniture, just a mattress and one plate. And when I launched my shop, I cried over the first order like it was a lottery ticket. Because to me it was. But through all of that, every scar I stitched quietly, every small win I celebrated in silence. Not one person in my family called to ask how I was doing. They didn't ask, because they didn't want to know. As long as I stayed quiet, they could imagine the worst. That I was failing, that I regretted leaving. That without them, I was nothing. They needed that narrative, and I gave it to them for a while, because silence is a strange kind of shield. It hides your pain and their guilt. So when Chloe saw me posting curated glimpses, a glowing storefront window, handwritten thank you notes from customers, quiet Sunday mornings in a space I built with my bare hands, she didn't ask how I got there. She decided it wasn't real, because if it was, it meant she had spent her whole life mocking the one person who had done what she never could. Leave. Rebuild. Thrive. And now, she was trying to expose me as a fraud. But what she didn't realize was that the life she thought was fake was the only thing in our family that had ever been real. The email came from an old coworker. Subject line: "You didn't hear this from me." Inside was a single sentence: "Chloe's asking questions about you, and not the kind people ask with love." Attached was a screenshot, a text thread between Chloe and a guy she once dated. He worked at a boutique PI agency downtown. She was asking for a full background sweep on me. I read it 3 times, then closed my laptop and made tea. Because when people go digging in the dark, they forget something. They don't get to control what surfaces. I didn't panic. Why would I? My life wasn't curated, it was carved. I had tax forms, receipts, LLC filings, shipping logs, vendor contracts, published interviews. I built this life with splinters in my fingers and silence in my lungs. But Chloe didn't know that. To her, I was still the girl who crumbled easily, who cried when Dad made jokes about real jobs, who said sorry too often for taking up space at the table. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to stop the investigation. I was going to help it. I dropped subtle posts on social, never lies, just breadcrumbs. A photo of me outside the business registration office, a tagged image with one of my investors at a networking event, a clip from a podcast interview where I talked about starting from zero. I even updated my LinkedIn, let her follow the trail. But what I didn't post, what I didn't say, was what I knew about her. Because here's the thing. When you grow up in a house built on secrets, you learn to pay attention. I knew Chloe lied about her master's degree. I knew she padded her resume, said she worked at a nonprofit that doesn't exist anymore. I knew she funneled money from our father's consulting business to cover credit card debt, then blamed it on a clerical error. And if the investigators were really doing their job, they wouldn't just be looking at me. They'd be looking at her too. I didn't have to fight. Didn't have to scream or confront or confess. I just had to stay still. Because Chloe had set a trap and never realized she was the one standing in the middle of it. It's strange how paper can silence a room. The manila folder Chloe slapped onto the table didn't look like much. But the way she smiled at it, like it was a weapon she couldn't wait to unsheath, said everything. I thought we deserved some truth tonight, she announced. The air in the restaurant shifted. A few people sat straighter. My uncle actually grinned. My mother glanced down at her plate, already pretending she wasn't involved. Chloe slid the folder toward Grandma like she was dealing cards. I hired 2 investigators, she said. Just wanted to be sure our little success story here, she nodded at me, wasn't too good to be true. The table tensed. Eyes shifted to me. I didn't blink, didn't flinch, just leaned back and watched. Grandma opened the folder with her usual grace, even though her fingers trembled slightly. First page, a copy of my business license. Stamped, verified, clean. Second page, screenshots of my e-commerce dashboard, revenue, growth charts, customer testimonials, a note from one of the PIs that read, confirmed, LLC status active, taxes filed, no signs of fraud or exaggeration. Grandma looked up at me, slowly, and nodded once. Small but powerful. Chloe's smile was still there but twitching. She leaned in. Keep going. So Grandma did. Third page. Photos. Not of me. Of Chloe. In an office that didn't match the non-profit she claimed to work for. A copy of her resume highlighted, annotated with phrases like no record of degree completion and non-existent organization. Fourth page. Bank transaction records. Transfers from Dad's consulting firm directly into an unregistered personal account under Chloe's name. The air changed, the kind of silence that presses into your bones. Grandma's hands froze on the page. My father went pale. My mother's fork hit her plate. And Chloe? She reached for the folder. Okay, this wasn't supposed to. Someone messed up. No one messed up, I said quietly. She looked at me, eyes wide. I met her stare. Calm. Steady. You wanted truth, remember? My uncle cleared his throat, murmured something under his breath. Grandma pushed the folder toward the center of the table. Then she turned to me and placed her hand gently over mine. I always knew, she whispered. I didn't cry, but something inside me unclenched. Because the justice I wanted wasn't about revenge. It was about being seen. And now, for the first time in my life, the room that used to swallow me whole was finally choking on the truth. I didn't say a word, and for once I didn't need to. The room was frozen, not with shock, but with the uncomfortable weight of clarity. The kind that doesn't just land, it lingers. The folder sat in the middle of the table like a live wire. No one touched it. No one looked at Chloe. Not yet. All eyes were on me. For the first time in my life, they were really looking. Not past me. Not through me. At me. Chloe laughed, a brittle, panicked sound. Okay, come on. This is ridiculous. You think she didn't set this up? Obviously, she planned this. She manipulated the whole thing. She probably wanted someone to dig. No one replied. She tried again. Louder this time. She's not a victim, you know. She's always been dramatic. Obsessed with being the underdog. Still nothing. She looked at Dad. Say something. He shifted in his seat, cleared his throat, but said nothing. I didn't look at her. I just looked down at my hands. They weren't shaking. That was new. Chloe stood up, as if she could walk away from what was already on the table. This is insane, she muttered. You all are going to believe her now? After everything? Grandma's voice broke the silence. We believe what's in front of us. Her words were soft, but they cut through the room like glass. She turned to me, squeezed my hand. Her palm was warm, steady. I always knew you were telling the truth, she said. I just didn't know how much it cost you to do it alone. That's when Chloe's face truly cracked. Her mouth opened, ready to defend, deflect, destroy. But no one was listening anymore. They weren't turning on her. They were simply done. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even judgment. It was indifference. The kind that says, we saw you. And now we've seen her. For the rest of the dinner, no one brought up the folder. No one asked me to speak. They just let me sit in the space I had earned. The space I had once begged for. And I didn't need to fill it with anything but presence. Because silence, when it's yours, isn't empty. It's power. And I had finally stopped asking for permission to hold it. I left before the cake. No scene. No goodbye. Just stood up, kissed Grandma's cheek, and walked out into the cold evening air without looking back. My heels clicked against the sidewalk like punctuation. Firm, final, unapologetic. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to stay and explain myself. Let them slice cake in silence. Let them sit with the truth they tried so hard to bury. That was never my weight to carry. 3 days later, my mother called. Twice. Then again. When I didn't pick up, she texted, "Can we talk? I think we need to clear the air. I want to make things right." I stared at the screen for a full minute. I thought about the years I tried to earn that voice, that attention, that sentence, and how, now that I finally had it, it meant nothing. Not because I was angry, because I was done. I typed slowly. One message. Nothing more. You never believed in me until someone else told you to. Then I blocked the number. I didn't cry. I didn't feel proud either. Just clean. There's a grief that comes with letting go of hope, even the fragile, half-dead kind. But there's freedom too. I went home, lit a candle, and sat with the quiet like an old friend. Because when you've spent your whole life being doubted, overlooked, and picked apart, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is walk away without needing to be understood. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure from them. I had given it to myself the moment I stopped replying. And as the flame flickered beside me, I whispered one last thing into the dark. Goodbye doesn't always need an echo. The apartment smells like vanilla and cedar. My kind of quiet, my kind of clean. I slip off my boots, pour a glass of red wine, and drop my keys into the little ceramic dish I made in a beginner's pottery class last fall. The one that wobbles on the bottom but still holds everything just right. The windows cracked open. A city hum swells softly in background. No spotlight. No applause. Just the life I built with bare hands and clear boundaries. I sit down at the desk where I launched my business. The same one I painted in soft sage and nicked with scissors during the first holiday rush. The same one Chloe probably thought didn't exist. My laptop dings. A new order. Handwritten journal. Custom inscription. Gift wrapped. I smile. Another stranger believing in something I made. Not because I begged them to, but because I created it well enough to speak for itself. I used to think validation had to be earned through performance. That success only mattered if it impressed the people who once doubted me. Not anymore. Real life doesn't need to be proven. It just needs to be lived. I take a slow sip of wine and stare out the window, the city lights reflecting in the glass like small constellations I no longer have to reach for. The world doesn't need to clap. It just needs to leave me whole. And as the night folds in quietly around me, I exhale. Not relief, not defiance, just peace. I am not the version of myself they remember. I am the version they'll never get the chance to know. Christmas was supposed to be magic this year. After 3 years overseas, 3 Christmases spent under foreign skies in dusty tents, eating freeze-dried meals, I was finally coming home. I imagined the snow crunching beneath my boots, the warmth of my childhood home, and most of all, the hug from the one person I kept picturing in every desert dream, my mom. She always made Christmas feel like a movie. Twinkling lights, cinnamon-scented halls, that old Nat King Cole vinyl she refused to replace with Spotify. That's what I was coming home to. Or at least I thought I was. I landed at JFK 2 nights before Christmas Eve. Still in uniform. Still smelling like army-issued detergent. I turned on my phone. A single notification waited. One message from my mom. It read, "Christmas is better without you. Don't come." That was it. No hello. No explanation. My hand went numb. My feet were still moving, following the crowd through baggage claim, but my brain had stopped. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever, and then I typed back a single word. Fine. No argument. No questions. No begging. Just fine. Because after years of pushing, years of being the daughter she could never mold, maybe I was finally too broken for her brand of Christmas. But what she didn't know was that in the next 48 hours, I would give her a Christmas she'd never forget. A different kind of magic. One that starts not with love, but with revenge. My mom wasn't evil. Not at first. She was just cold, precise, the kind of woman who ironed her napkins and arranged the bookshelf by color, not genre. Growing up, everything had to be perfect. My smile in pictures, my posture at the dinner table, my friends, my future. And when I started showing signs of being my own person, messy, loud, adventurous, she started pulling away. I remember once, in 10th grade, I came home with a scraped knee from climbing the neighbor's fence. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just said, "What will the neighbors think if they see you like that?" That's who she was. After my dad passed when I was 17, it only got worse. He was the buffer, the soft voice in the storm. Without him, her need for control tightened like a noose. When I told her I was joining the army, she looked at me like I said I was joining a biker gang. You'll ruin your body. You'll ruin your chances at a real career. No one decent marries a soldier. That was her goodbye speech. No hugs, no tears, just judgment. And yet, every year I sent her gifts, postcards, emails. I even FaceTimed her from Kuwait once on her birthday. She answered, looked annoyed, said she was busy preparing for guests, and hung up. Still, I held on to this fantasy of her waiting at the window, tears in her eyes, arms open. But that text, "Christmas is better without you," that killed the last piece of hope I had. And something else took its place. Something stronger. Clarity. I didn't lose my mother that day. I lost her years ago. I just finally admitted it. I knew I shouldn't have gone. After that message, every ounce of pride I had told me to turn back, book a hotel, disappear. But a part of me, that stubborn, aching part, needed to see it for myself. I rented a car, a cheap, dented sedan that rattled every time I hit a pothole. I drove through the neighborhood where I grew up, same wreaths, same lights, same plastic reindeer on the Cooper's lawn that blinked out of sync. Nothing had changed, except me. I pulled up to the house around 6 p.m. The porch light was off. No wreath, no tree glowing through the front window. It looked dead. I got out slowly, boots crunching on frostbitten grass. My heart beat louder than my footsteps. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I knocked, waited, knocked again. I could hear the TV on inside. She was home. I texted, "I'm outside. I just want to drop off your gift." The text was delivered. Read. No reply. I stood there for a full 2 minutes, staring at the door I once ran through with scraped knees and report cards in hand. Then I turned back, got in the car, and parked across the street. I stared at the house for hours. No one came out. No lights turned on. I fell asleep in the front seat, curled up in my uniform jacket, the Christmas present I'd bought her still sitting on the passenger seat, wrapped in red paper, tied with gold ribbon. That night, for the first time in years, I truly accepted that I had no home. I woke up the next morning to the sound of my phone buzzing. It was 9 a.m. I had barely slept. The ache in my chest felt like it might swallow me whole, but I forced myself to sit up. I reached for my phone, the glow of the screen still bright in the morning light. One notification. I opened it. A picture from my mother. The Christmas party. The one I was told not to come to. There she was, smiling, perfectly made up, standing next to Karen, the woman who had taken my place in her heart years ago. My stepmother's face beamed like she had just won some prize. My mom's arm draped around her. They were laughing. And in the background, my little brother. The little boy I used to protect, the one who cried when I left for boot camp. Now he was standing there laughing too. Everyone was there. All of them. The neighbors. The family friends. The same people who had watched me grow up, and now they were all smiling with my mother. No trace of me. No acknowledgement of my absence. I scanned the photo, feeling my heart twist in my chest. And then I saw the caption, "A family Christmas as it should be." I read it again, "As it should be." The words burned into my mind. My mom had erased me, not just from this photo, but from her life. And somehow, someway I knew, this Christmas, I would make her remember me. And I wouldn't leave until she did. That photo, it was the last straw. Something in me broke that morning, and something else took its place. I had spent years trying to fit into her version of me. I had always been the one who apologized, who caved, who hoped and hoped for the love I never got. But not anymore. I wasn't the daughter she could control. I wasn't the child she could mold into her image. I wasn't going to sit in a corner and beg for scraps of affection. She wanted a perfect Christmas? Fine. But if she thought she could erase me from her life without any consequences, she was wrong. It took less than 24 hours to put my plan into motion. I may have been an army soldier, but I was also a daughter who knew the cracks in her mother's perfect world. First, I started with the social media. I scrolled through her posts, her perfectly manicured family Christmas photos, her endless updates about her charity work, her volunteer efforts, the good life she'd sold to everyone. But behind those filters, there were cracks. Her financials were a mess. I knew that from the family accounts I had access to as a kid. She had been funneling money from her charity into personal accounts for years. There was the affair with the pastor, which, thanks to my father's old journal, I knew was very real. I spent hours digging, confirming. The evidence was all there, scattered across old documents, online receipts, and my memories. And then I took the first step, an anonymous tip to the charity's largest donor, accusing her of misusing funds, a message to the local church, warning them about her inappropriate relationship with the pastor, a post on Reddit, a call out to all the women who had been manipulated by her perfect family image and never spoken out. I was still shaking when I hit send, but something felt right. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was about making her face the truth, about making her reckon with the woman I had always been, the one she tried to destroy with her lies, control, and neglect. And I knew in that moment that I wasn't going to stop until she saw the consequences of her actions. It didn't take long for things to spiral. The first message I received came late that night. It was from a woman named Susan, a longtime donor to my mother's charity. "Emily, I don't know what's going on, but we've received a report accusing your mother of mishandling funds. Please tell me this isn't true." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to backpedal, apologize, say it was all a mistake. But I didn't. Instead, I calmly replied, "It's true. You'll want to look deeper into her finances." The next day, the church sent an email thanking me for bringing the allegations to light. They'd removed her from any future events. By the weekend, her perfect world was starting to crack. I kept checking the news. Posts on Reddit were flooding in. Stories from women who had been manipulated, mistreated, even blacklisted by my mother's perfect little world. People started connecting the dots. And just like that, the first domino fell. A local news station picked up the story about her charity's shady dealings. The pastor was suspended from the church for misconduct. My mother, she had no idea. All the while, I watched from a distance, feeling the smallest hint of satisfaction. For once, I wasn't the one being ignored, erased, or overlooked. But I wasn't done. Not by long shot. I had to make sure she knew who was behind it all, who was behind her downfall. And that's when I made my next move. A final post on Reddit. A tell-all exposing everything. Her affair, the stolen money, the lies, the fake persona. I didn't reveal my name. I didn't need to. The truth would be enough. I sat back, waiting for the chaos to unfold. The call came in the middle of the night. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, vibrating like a warning. I didn't need to look at the caller ID. I already knew who it was. It was her. I hesitated for a moment. A part of me wanted to let it ring out, to leave her hanging, waiting for a reply that would never come. But I didn't. I picked up. "Emily." Her voice was tight, strained, like she was holding back tears. though I knew better than to believe any of that. What have you done? I waited, letting the silence stretch, letting her feel the weight of her own actions. What have I done? I repeated slowly, my voice colder than I intended. You destroyed everything. My charity, my reputation. You've torn apart our family. I could almost picture her on the other end, face flushed, jaw clenched, fighting for control. You did that, not me, I said quietly. She was silent for a moment. Then came the words I'd been expecting. You're selfish. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? You're nothing but a disappointment. The words stung, but they didn't have the power they once did. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need her love. I wasn't the little girl waiting for her praise anymore. Merry Christmas, Mom, I said almost casually. I could hear her gasp, the realization that I wasn't going to beg, that I wasn't going to make it easy for her to guilt-trip me anymore. I took a deep breath. And next year, I might send you a Christmas card with a court summons inside. I hung up before she could respond. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, free. Free from her lies. Free from the weight of her expectations. Free from the chains of a family that never really cared about me. For the first time, I wasn't a disappointment. I was a woman who had finally taken control of her life. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was moving forward. And this time, I was doing it on my own terms. It's been 6 months since that call. My mother never tried to contact me again. Her charity was audited. Her social circle, the one she'd spent decades curating, turned its back on her. The woman who once stood above everyone else with her perfect posture and perfect lies was finally exposed. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't dance on the ruins. Because somewhere along the way, it stopped being about revenge. It became about reclaiming me. I moved back to a small town outside Denver, quiet, clean, with mountains that reminded me of who I used to be. I started volunteering with vets, teaching young girls self-defense. I even adopted a dog, Charlie, a mutt with crooked teeth and eyes too big for his head. On my first real Christmas in this new chapter, I cooked dinner for 6 people, none of them family by blood, but every single one of them chose to be there. We laughed. We shared stories. We even wore those ridiculous matching sweaters. And as I looked around that table, I realized something. Family isn't who raised you. It's not who you share DNA with. It's who shows up. It's who sees you, really sees you, and stays. I used to think revenge would make me feel whole, but it didn't. Walking away did. Telling my truth did. Building something real with people who loved me as I am did. So no, I won't be sending her that Christmas card. Some ghosts are better left behind. Because I didn't lose my family. I finally found it. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up. You owe nothing to people who treat you like you don't matter. Not even if they're your parents. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Not in anger, not in fear, but in peace. Because healing isn't about going back to the people who broke you. It's about becoming someone they can no longer hurt.